We will be discussing how it is that Trump is using the firing of Jerome Powell as a distraction against what it is that's really taking place within this economy. Now, I've been trying to describe this situation for quite some time on how it is. Excuse me, let me make sure. Okay, just wanted to make sure the Wi-Fi was turned off. I've been trying to describe this for a while now on how it is that they are using the idea of removing Jerome Powell as a distraction away from what it is that is truly taking place within this economy, especially when it comes to monetary policy. Now, most people have a hard time just trying to grab the idea of what it is that's going on with monetary policy alone, let alone trying to figure out how it is that it would change once Jerome Powell is no longer in his position. Like these hypothetical, superficial conversations that are taking place about this particular topic is literally throwing you off the track. It's distracting you from the reality of the situation that has taken place within the economy, especially when it comes to monetary policy. How it is that you position yourself with this information is so critical. But yet here they are delivering you information that is meaningless. Like literally meaningless. It doesn't have any kind of relevance towards anything that has taken place out there when you think about what it is that's going to take place when Jerome Powell is no longer in his position. This is probably the biggest distraction that has taken place right now. We have to understand there is nothing that can remove Jerome Powell from his position outside of his own choice or his fraudulent behavior. That's it. There is nothing the president can do. There's nothing that Congress can do. There's nothing that anybody can do unless there is some sort of profound change to the way that the Federal Reserve is chartered by the government to create the monetary policy that we now experience. Unless something has profoundly changed there, there's nothing that can happen from this. It's completely superficial conversation. And so even with the idea that I saw in the article about, I forget, I'm sorry, I don't have it right here in front of me, but this particular person that they were interviewing saying that they're 99% sure that Jerome Powell will be fired. This is complete BS. Complete. All right, complete BS. The reality of the situation right now is that the economy is far less restricted than anybody had ever given any kind of consideration for. Especially those who are following the narrative of Donald Trump saying that Jerome Powell is too late, doesn't know what he's doing, he's an idiot, all this other stuff. They don't take into consideration that the Federal Reserve has positioned monetary policy in a way that is far less restricted than anybody could ever possibly imagine. Like, you think about it, right now the stock market is achieving all-time highs, right? We have a labor market that, although is weakening, is still incredibly resilient, right? We have unemployment that is not rising dramatically like a lot of people said it would. Recessionary pressures that had been constantly communicated out there saying that it's right around the corner, recession, has come and gone. All the indicators, right? Inverted yield curve, SOM rule, all these things that would indicate a recession has proved themselves to be inaccurate because most people are looking at the Federal Reserve inaccurately. They have a good understanding of how the Federal Reserve used to conduct themselves. And this is so important to understand, that the Federal Reserve conducted themselves in a way that interest rate adjustments was the main policy tool, and that if they ran into a problem with recessionary pressures, people like losing their jobs, unemployment's rising, consuming is slowing down, the consumerism, they would lower interest rates by about 5%. Fed funds rate would come down about 5%. This 5% drop in interest rates would spark the investment into the economy that the Federal Reserve would be looking for. Mainly, it would cause corporations to want to invest into those corporations, and part of that would be hiring people. Hiring people meant more people working, more people earning money. More people earning money meant more people spending money. More people spending money is the consuming that the Federal Reserve would be looking for by lowering interest rates. A lot of times we just take it in in a shorter consideration. Lowering interest rates gets people to go out there and spend the money. Yeah, okay, true, right? That's the short way of saying it. Lowering interest rates gets people to go out there and buy houses, cars, and go on vacation. That's true. But the real reason the Federal Reserve would want to lower interest rates is to spark corporate investment into hiring people, to get more people hiring, lower the unemployment. This would create the consuming. That consuming would then cause the inflationary pressures to build inside of the economy, and therefore combat the recession. This is typical understanding of the Fed. That no longer works for them. And since nobody realizes that's not what's happening now, it's very difficult for them to understand what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing, because they're thinking about the lowering of interest rates. Everybody does. This is like 99.9% of the attention is put on the Federal Reserve. When do they lower interest rates? Understanding that the Federal Reserve is looking at something called the neutral interest rate. This is the rate that is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. It's when they are neutral. And right now we have elevated inflation expectation that has pulled the neutral interest rate ever higher. Now, we have talked about this not only from years ago, talking about how it is that the elevated inflation expectation would pull that neutral interest rate higher. But also, we have validated that information with Michelle Bowman's speech from February of 2025, just recently, confirming that very thing, saying that the Fed funds rate, although has dropped down 100 basis points, is now closer to neutral than anybody realizes. No, and like, this is something that very few people take into consideration when they're looking out there into the economy. In fact, they will hear this and still ask the question, when are they going to lower rates? Not taking into consideration that neutral interest rate is moving closer and closer to the Fed funds rate, which is going to put the Fed at neutral, and they don't have to move. Like, they may have to cut a little bit in order to achieve the neutral position, but neutral interest rate is rising. And again, this isn't something that you can observe in real time. You just have to understand that it will move up with elevated inflation expectations. And this is what we're experiencing from it. So many people are going to continue to feel the pain. This is the reason why people are going to continue to feel the pain from it. And 80% of the people are going to feel the pain, but it's not going to really matter to the Fed if 80% of the people are experiencing pain. It's because the Federal Reserve is trying to create consumers. That's it. Now, if they can create a consumer by you going out and working, right? This is you going out, working, collecting that paycheck, and then spending that paycheck into the economy. That's one way of doing it. The Fed's cool with that. They used to lower interest rates, and corporations would go out there and hire a bunch of people, and the unemployment would fall. Inflation would rise. They actually had something called a neutral employment rate. Now, unemployment can be really, really low. This is the problem that we now face here in the economy. Unemployment can be really, really low, and it does not create the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve would typically be looking for. See, they would lower interest rates, people would go to work, people would spend that money into the economy, that supply-demand imbalances would start to be created, and you would find inflationary pressures from it. But since the Obama administration, we've had historically low unemployment, and the Federal Reserve failed to find their inflationary scenario they were looking for, all the way up through the first Trump administration. I mean, even Donald Trump was saying it, best jobs numbers in history, and there's no inflation, period. Right? That was him saying that exact thing. That's the problem. That right there, to understand, is the heart of the problem. Low unemployment, everybody working, did not create enough consuming to create the inflationary scenario. See, there was a time when you go to work would actually benefit the economy. You're working now. You're working your ass off now, and it's not benefiting the economy. It's not creating enough consumers, because the consumers are the top 20% of household income. Now, this is a scary scenario for a lot of people to face. Top 20% of household incomes are doing 70% of the consuming. The top 10% do 50% of the consuming. Think about that. Top 10% of household incomes do 50% of the consumption here in the economy. The top 20% do 70% of the consumption. Think about it. That's 30% of the consumption left up to 80% of the people. How is it that the Federal Reserve is going to create a situation in which that they can get 80% of the people to go out there and increase their consumption if you're already working your ass off and it's not going to increase the inflationary pressures? That's the problem that is being faced. The Fed can put you to work all day long. It doesn't matter. It's not going to create the environment that they're looking for. You're not going to go out there and consume anymore. You're debt saturated and your job is not enough. There was a time, not even just a few decades ago, it would have worked. They could have lowered interest rates, more people go out there and work, more people working, increase the consumption, supply-demand imbalances, and they would find their inflationary pressures from it. That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. They can put you to work all day long, but 80% of the people going to work does only 30% of the consumption, and that doesn't really increase that much. But they can really inject money into the top 20% of the people and do 70% of increase in consumption, or where 70% of the consumption is being held, it can increase from there. So you think about higher interest rates, how does that benefit anybody? It doesn't. It doesn't benefit 80% of the people because 80% of the people are debt saturated or live on debt or require debt. And if you have higher interest rates, it's a burden on them. So 80% of the people suffer consequences when you have elevated interest rates. But the top 20%, they swim in it. They're doing awesome because they get a return on capital investment that is higher. Like, you think about it, you invest money into an investment that has a higher interest rate, you get a better return from that. Well, if you're the bottom 80%, then you don't do that. You spend all your money, you're not investing anything. So this higher interest rate doesn't do a benefit to you, it burdens you. 80% of the people get burdened by an elevated interest rate. The top 20% get a benefit from it, and they're the ones doing the consuming. This is how everybody is now being pissed at the economy, pissed at the Federal Reserve, pissed at Donald Trump, is because all their efforts, everything that they are doing is literally to benefit the top 20%. That's it. That's all they can do. I've explained it so many times here on this channel that people say, oh man, what are they going to do? All these people can't afford homes. And I'm like, all these people, you're talking about 80% of the people? Yeah, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. If you do not position yourself in a way that says, I'm going to be the capitalist or the property owner, you're going to be left behind. There was a time that it wasn't that way. You could have gone and had that average job and it would have been enough. It would have been awesome. You could have showed up every day, been disciplined, stayed sober, put your money towards, a retirement plan, and you would have been fine. Everything would have worked out, regardless of anything else that happened out there. I mean, sure, everybody has horrible circumstances that could take place, but for the most part, you could just take that strategy and it would have worked. That does not work today. Failure fails miserably. I guess there's some place, somewhere, somehow, somebody could do that, but not really. Most people just suffer the consequences of attempting to go down that path. So understand it. Understand what is happening right now. Understand that the Federal Reserve is now in a position in which that they try to increase consumption. The consumption is done by the top 20%. That's it. Just understand it from that level, and it will make a whole lot more sense that they are not conducting themselves to benefit 80% of the people, because 80% of the people only do 30% of the consumption. It doesn't work for them. They could make a great environment for you. It doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't work for their policy. It doesn't work for the economy to the point that it is nowadays. It just doesn't work. And although we wish and hope and pray that it would, it don't. It just simply doesn't. And there's nothing that can be done to reverse the situation. The only thing you can really do is understand it for yourself so that you can then realize, man, this day job will never be enough, and there's nobody I can vote for who's going to fix that. But there's things that I can do. You can get in the flow. Most people don't even realize that that's a possibility, to be in the flow. I was talking with my buddy the other day. He watches every one of my videos. I wouldn't call him a mentor, But when it comes to creating your reality, when it comes into having the things in your life that you really want, when it comes into just reaching out there and just grabbing it, this guy taught me it. If there was anybody, it was this dude. And he says, dude, I love watching your videos, especially when you talk about being in the flow. He says, just put it in your head and think about it. Imagine yourself knowing that it's out there, knowing that you can get it, and then you go out there and you go for it. Like, he doesn't know the secret. He's never read Think and Grow Rich. He's never read any of that stuff, but he understands that stuff from an instinctual level, and he's good at it. And he loves those videos. He loves watching them when I'm talking about being in the flow. And he says, man, that's exactly right. And I said, where do you think I learned it from, man? Who do you think that I realized, man, this is possible? Like, I went and read the books and, listened to the audios and all this other stuff to understand how this thing works, how this idea of manifesting reality works. This guy just lives it. He never read any of that stuff. He just knows that it's how it happens, instinctually. It's good stuff. All right, moving on. Very sobering truth, but much needed. Thank you so much. Yeah, JGD, I really appreciate the comment. I really appreciate everybody being here. We got 281 watching with 45 likes. Be sure and hit that like button. By hitting that like button, the YouTube algorithm will pick up this video, spread it around for more people. Let's share the idea of what it is that's going on with this neutral interest rate. This is going to give us the best position we could possibly can. I'm not worried about the stock market. I'm not worried about the economy. I'm not worried about my job. I'm not worried about any of this stuff. And it's not that I live like delusional about the situation that we now face. It's that I just don't live in fear. I live in abundance. There is nothing but abundance out there. And if there's a problem that is out there that is being created by an external, there is nothing but solutions that can be had from it. To know that you can position yourself to take advantage of it. That's how this channel is really trying to push the information, is so that you can internalize it for yourself to make the best decisions for yourself. It's difficult. Everybody wants an easy way, and I know I want an easy way, man. I would just love to show up every day, 9 to 5, call it good, go home, and then that be enough. Like, I would love for that to be the case, but it's just simply not, right? And to know that how the economy is restricted or accommodating is probably going to be the most helpful thing that you can do to understand how it is that you are going to position yourself for your business, for your investments, for your purchases that you make. So very few people discuss the neutral interest rate and how or whether or not that is accommodating or restricting the economy. This channel will not let that go. We will not let it go. All right, keep going on. The funny money economy will save you, not in my humble opinion, but good luck. Well, P. Morton, see right there, that attitude right there about the money is that you're screwed. There's no saving you. There's no way that you can fix yourself. There's no way that you can position yourself. The outcome is absolute failure. So good luck to you. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate the vote of confidence with the luck and all that other stuff, but I don't need luck. I know exactly what I am doing. I've positioned myself to deal with the fact that we have a collapse of the third-party claim. I positioned myself for that. If we have a rise in cryptocurrencies, I've positioned myself for that. If we have a position in which that the stock market does well, I position myself for that. If the housing market takes off and does well, I position myself for that. If one of these things happens to fall, usually the other one does better. I don't care what happens. I mean, I care. I don't care what happens. I'm not concerned about it. I live in zero fear. Bring it on. I'm not scared of anybody, anything. There's no worry. There's no worry. Literally, there's no worry about what's happening out there. But I do find it very frustrating when I see people out there saying, oh man, 99% chance that they're going to fire Jerome Powell. And I'm thinking, well, what will that mean? What will that do to monetary policy? How do you think that the FOMC, the 11 voting members, or the 11 other voting members, 5 alternates and 2 advisors, are going to think about Jerome Powell not being there and how they're going to change their view of monetary policy? I mean, I've read a lot of their documents. I've read these speeches from the FOMC. I've read through a lot of the documents. I've shared tons of them here on YouTube. And I believe that there will be zero change to the monetary policy if they fire Jerome Powell, because he's a spokesperson. He makes no difference when it comes to monetary policy, but yet all this distraction away from what it is that's taken place with monetary policy to focus in on Jerome Powell, who is literally a voice and makes no decision. He makes a decision. He makes his voting decision on how he votes, but that's it, right? That's his contribution to monetary policy, is his vote and the fact that he speaks on behalf of the FOMC. So you get rid of Jerome Powell, you change nothing about monetary policy. And so by understanding the monetary policy without Jerome Powell gives you a much better position inside of the economy, from your investments, from your business point of view, everything. Taking out debt, all that stuff becomes a much better understanding than understanding that Jerome Powell getting fired is going to change everything, right? Because it won't change a thing. Nothing changes. Okay? All right, the key is to recognize success has nothing to do with money. Money buys you some freedom. It doesn't buy happiness. Absolutely, Mac. I mean, I totally agree with that. The money flow is a very interesting concept, because most people think, I need the money, I want the money, I want this big number, I want $1 million. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't want $1 million. $1 million is a hard work, it's time, it's effort, it's all this stuff. What you want is to be able to spend $1 million. You want what $1 million can go out there and buy. That's what you want, right? I mean, just sitting with a bank account with $1 million going, did it. Now I'm sitting in my 97 Suburban with nothing else going on, and I have no reason to buy anything, but I got my $1 million and I'm a success. Like, what good was the $1 million? Just to say that you have it? I mean, I guess some people might feel that that's cool or whatever to say that I have $1 million, but most people want to spend $1 million. They want what $1 million can buy. There's a huge difference inside of that. And now understanding that all the stuff that money can buy is available to you anyway. You don't need the money. Like, yeah, money is generally the facilitator of the trade to do it, but being in a position in order to acquire the things that you like in life that you want, you don't need money to do it. And that's what's scary for most people, is they're like, no, bullshit, I don't know what you're talking about. You need money for everything, and if you don't got the money, then you can't do any of that stuff. You're absolutely right. You're limited. You can't do it. My buddy proved to me that that is absolute crap. He proved to me time and time and time again that you can have anything you want even if you don't have the money. It's amazing. He could get anything in his life, anything he wanted in his life, and he didn't necessarily, like, sometimes he needed the money to do it, and if that was the case, then he would go out there and get the money to make it happen. But if he didn't need the money, then he would make it happen without the money. And it was amazing to watch it happen, to know that it could occur in the craziest of ways, right? The most out of the blue ways of manifesting things into your reality. Just knowing that it's a possibility is the key to it, because the moment that you don't believe it, then you prove yourself right. It will not happen, I guarantee you. And trying to convince yourself as opposed to truly believing it is just as bad as not believing it. You don't try to convince yourself. You either know it or you don't. And that's the difference inside of it. All right. Kirk, I will pay for my 3 daughters' weddings and down payment on houses. That's my goal. Everybody has their own goals, man. All right. Permacook, damn you, Richard. All right. Cleaning your house and the bugs are worse now. All right. I'm going to give it another 5 minutes here, guys, and we got to call it quits. Any more stuff you want me to cover, talk about? Joke about? What do you guys want to talk about here? Okay. Grumpy had $1 billion, but not even his wife wants to lay with him. Yep. Here's from Nathan. All they have to do is search for it on YouTube. MRider777, are they going to use Trump as a strategy for 4 years? Well, I think the strategy is playing out pretty well, right? Like, if you were trying to elevate the inflation expectations, don't you think that the threat of tariffs have worked? I mean, the reality of the situation is, I mean, some increase in inflation, but not much. It's still moderately above 2%, much like what the Federal Reserve said that they wanted the inflation to be. So to me, like, if you have elevated inflation expectation, but fairly subdued inflation, like it's just moderately above 2%, but you believe that the inflation is going to be much higher, then what that will do is pull that neutral interest rate higher, makes the economy less restricted. The top 20% get a benefit out of the higher interest rates, but yet they get to deploy that money into a lower inflation environment. This is like a total benefit for the rich. I mean, this is the way I see it. 80% of the people suffer the consequences of this, and yes, that's true. And you will continue to suffer the consequences of it, and he will slap you in the face and say that it's something else that's causing it. But the reality is that is it. If they can elevate the inflation expectation, that's you, push that neutral interest rate higher, making the economy less restricted, it will benefit the top 20% because they have capital investment that is going to have a higher return that they then get to deploy into an economy that has an inflation that is moderately above 2%. You see how this is benefiting the rich? 100%. Like, very little doubt in my mind. Sorry, I had a chat come in. So understanding this is how it is that they are operating, and yet the guys that the narrative that is being pushed out there is somehow this is going to be a plan to bring back an environment for the working class individual. Absolute garbage. That is so far from the truth. There is like, that could not be further from the truth. Everything that they are doing right now has absolutely caused the inequality to grow and has done nothing more than benefit the top 20% of people. I know. I'm like at 19.99 of those 20% of the people. Like, I am right there at the edge, and I can tell you right now that the investments that I put in are growing over time. They're growing right now as people are saying, man, this is shitty economy, this is terrible, all this. I'm doing better. Right? My debts are getting lower, my assets are growing, and there's very few people out there who are talking that way because that's 80% of the people who are missing out on it. Sad. I understand. I'm a working class individual just like everybody else, but I figured out how to get the cash flow and get my living expenses as low as possible in order to experience what it is to be at that top 20% of income. You know how hard it is? How much of a struggle it is, how difficult it is. I cannot imagine I cannot imagine anything out there that could possibly be done to give an environment to 80% of the people to have that sort of experience that I'm getting now. I don't know what it is that could possibly be done. If you do not do it for yourself, there's nobody out there who's going to do it. There's nobody coming, I guarantee you. It was when I realized that there was nothing that anybody else could do to try and create an environment that was going to be better for me except for me. That was the moment that everything changed. I wish I could give you some information that would say, here, man, let's all go and vote for this guy who's going to fix it all. Never going to happen. The only person that you can go to is that guy in the mirror. I hope you guys go and do that. All right, I got to go. I got to read the super chat, though, real quick before I call it quits. All right, where is it? There we go. We got JDD with the $5. Will do. Please do another interview with Owen Benjamin. Love the first one. Yeah, you bet, guys. I've been wanting to do interviews. In fact, I want to interview my buddy who goes out there and gets what he wants. I think his attitude about life and how it is that you acquire the things that you want in life, this is where I think a lot of people are suffering. They suffer the lacking of this attitude, this belief within themselves. I want to interview him, all right? Because interviewing him, I think, will give a lot of people that feeling of, oh, yeah, it is out there. Everything is in abundance and I can go get it. Definitely Owen Benjamin was awesome. And I had never met Owen Benjamin before the interview. And I talked to him for an hour and he was absolutely a coolest guy. Super fun to talk to. Funny as could be, like told so many jokes during the interview. And I tell you, man, I really enjoyed that conversation and really enjoyed that he was actually willing to give me the time to come out here and do an interview. So, man, Owen Benjamin, super cool dude. I love to hear your friend's view on abundance flow. Yeah, I'll get him on here. I talked to him yesterday morning and mentioned it to him, and he was like, "Oh man, I don't know. I like, but I'll get him. I could get him on here, especially if it's like a phone call conversation as opposed to something else." But all right, Mr. Balloon Pimp. Oh, that's the one. Yep. Okay, same thing with the interview with the buddy. Yeah, I'll see. I'll talk to him again. I mean, he'll see this video, and I'm sure he'll probably call me and let me know whether or not he'll do it. All right, guys, I got to go back into work. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. 260 people watching with 92 likes. Thank you for hitting that like button. Again, by going out there and hitting that like button, you'll get the YouTube algorithm to grab this video, spread it around for more people to join in. Thank you so much for the $5 JGD for the super chat and the supporting of the Uneducated Economist. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. And again, there's links down in the description of my videos where you can go and become a Patreon member, a member of the channel here for the members only, where you can get member only videos that we have broken down the Fed speeches in a way that you will be able to understand from a working class point of view. And the podcast. And if you don't like watching these videos on YouTube, you can listen to them on the podcast. It does take us a little bit of time to rip the audio and then get it uploaded to the podcast, but I assure you they will all go up there at some point. So thank you for following the podcast and bringing some traffic to that. I'm out of here. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.